This is a video of one of my pet hatreds, which is the tyrant facilitator. I worked at Xerox for a number of years, and there was something deeply, deeply, deeply sick about Xerox on the East Coast. It was a really, 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 really ugly group of human beings. And I realized the monopoly days of Xerox allowed them to hire roughly 80,000 ugly, 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 ugly people because you could sell no matter how ugly you were. And do you want to copy everything by hand, or do you want a Xerox machine? There was no competition. And then all that changed in the early 80s when the Japanese suddenly could make copy machines too. And then Xerox never recovered. They never learned how to compete in a market. They never competed in a market, and they never succeeded at competing in a market. And even today, they're not. The Xerox employees, which at the time when I first went there, I didn't realize really how bad they were as people. But they kept recommending this wonderful facilitator later. Oh, you've got to meet her. You've got to meet her. She's so great. And I was busy inventing new businesses and winning the Baldrige Award for Xerox and installing AI circles at Xerox and inventing a Taguchi expert system that was correct instead of distorted like Stanford and MIT do when they talk about Taguchi, and interviewing Taguchi in Japanese instead of in English, and doing stuff like that, being useful, building businesses. 3 ventures at Silicon Valley launched for Xerox PARC, helping with Liveboard launch, being the first presentation at the first document symposium that Paul Allaire held at Stanford headquarters. And I was doing all that stuff, so I didn't have time to go see some damn facilitator. And I don't remember when. I think it's my next to last year, my last year there. This guy, what's his name? I forget his name. Got me to go. He'd been praising this lady forever. Oh, you got to go. Oh, she's going to be in town. You could just drive 30 minutes and see her. And so I went, and it was just absolute. Stalin could have taken lessons from her. Really, Hitler and Stalin had a lot to learn about tyranny from this woman. She not only told you how to react, she told you how to feel in minute detail every 15 seconds. And if you didn't feel what she ordered you to feel, she corrected you for incorrect feeling. You're not getting this, are you, Richard? You need some help. She would say, because I didn't feel the way I thought. I was being exposed to a tyrannical bunch of crap, and I was supposed to feel, apparently, that you are God's greatest gift to the future of the earth because you're a facilitator. And it was just really interesting to see. I thought it was kind of a ovary revenge on testes. These women facilitators negotiate a leadership role as facilitator for your group, and then they are going to take in charge of the emotional life of the group and tell you how to feel, because they're not interested in the cognitive part, because female hormones, male hormones, brains are different. Something like that. I mean, it was ridiculous as that sounds. That was what she was actually doing. And I never believed any of those theories. I thought they were, sexist crap. But boy, after running to her, there was really credible evidence that there's a group of Amazonians out there whose brains tell them that they are the leader, but it's not cognition, because that's what the males think they're leader of. It's feelings, and they're going to tell you how to feel every 15 seconds. So the word, and then another thing, I was in Southeast Michigan, totally different story, not Xerox, working at the University of Michigan as a graduate student. And we were doing research with participatory management experiments at the Saturn part of General Motors, borrowed from Nordic Europe, and sponsored by the labor union, and but cooperatively developed with management using Japanese examples too. So you had kind of Japanese middle up management and Nordic workplace democracy management mixing with the new style of assembly line for Saturn, and everything was being experimented with and tried out and prototyped. And nothing was fixed, so you could change. You could actually affect things, and this was very different than the top-down usual way of creating a GM car nameplate. And so this was a real opportunity. And we were doing consulting there on the management side. Sometimes I was the management side, and my partner Kornblue was on the labor side. And we had circles, quality circles. Now I had just come from Japan, where I had done quality circles for years in Matsushita and Sekisui, who both won the Deming Prize. So I knew what the top quality circles in Japan were, inside out and backwards, in Japanese. And then I came here to Southern Michigan, and the circles weren't meeting for 3 weeks in a row because the manager was on vacation. I'm freezing because of how weird that is. What difference does it make if he's dead, on vacation, or a giraffe? He's got nothing to do with the circle. The American circles wouldn't meet or move without management permission. not a circle. That's called a prison cell. Americans are so dictatorial and totalitarian. They all this talk about democracy, they don't have any. My wife was Japanese, and she got some part-time money by doing interpreting for smart Japanese who visiting these auto things and installing new Japanese equipment. And Unimation had just failed because their robots were too expensive and unreliable and done by PhDs at MIT. Nobody could understand what the hell they were supposed to do, and they didn't work. All these advanced math crap from MIT doesn't work. And then Matsushita had these little tiny Pana robots that were really simple, did one task absolutely reliably, and you could understand them and program them yourself. And so the G threw out the American crap from MIT and hired the Panasonic crap, which were vastly cheaper, and they worked. And you could learn them. You didn't kill people by suddenly moving and knocking your head off, which one of the Unimations actually had done with one of the workers. So my wife was interpreting for the inventor of these robots, a Japanese guy, and she came to the appropriate place on the appropriate room, and everything worked fine. Had a great time, got a lot of money, and after 2 or 3 days of interpreting, which is tiring, it finished, and she went home with a lot of money, very satisfied, and so she agreed to do it again 2 months later. And the first section was just a preparatory section with simulations and stuff. The second section was supposed to be doing the same stuff on the actual robots themselves. And presumably, therefore, the robots would be in the room. And she came, and it came on the appointed day and found out that the robots were not in the room, but they were there. In fact, they had been there for 6 weeks on the loading dock. And for 6 weeks, they had stayed on the loading dock, because for 6 weeks, the plant manager had been on a tour to the West Coast and on a tour to Europe. And because this is the plant manager, you're talking about 8,000 person plant, because one man, the plant manager, had been gone for 6 weeks, nobody had the authority or common sense or courage or permission to move the 20 robots from the loading dock to the instructional space in the manufacturing floor. They had a training space right next to the assembly line. For 6 weeks, they sat on the loading dock, raining on the boxes and stuff, because no one out of 8,000, there was only one person out of 8,000 with enough authority to do the commonsensical. Now, this is the degree of the anti-democraticness of Anglo people, and the joy that the male hormones of the Anglo male gets in abusing all the people under him to make him feel important. It's really 90% monkey in the West and no leadership. Now, in Japan, you don't have this kind of crap. I mean, all 8,000 workers have the authority to do the obvious, and they do it. So in Japan, robots on the loading dock an hour later are where they're supposed to be. And people work out changes of their schedule. No, local Japanese work teams make their own schedule. They don't get it from their boss. They negotiate it themselves, and then they propose it to the boss, and then he checks with overall coordination to see if it's okay and safe, and then says okay. And 99% of the time, it is okay. This is facilitation, a new form of Hitler-Stalinesque tyranny in the world. One of my pet peeves.